Haleigh Ryan Hurst is a published children's book author, blogger, vlogger, and podcast host. Haleigh is a senior pursuing a pre-law triple major degree in political science and public relations with honors at the University of Oklahoma and Science of Law and Policy at Liberty University. After college, Haleigh plans to pursue a Juris Doctorate in mergers and acquisitions law from the University of Texas at Austin. She currently works at a political campaigns advocacy group called Team Thrive in Oklahoma City. Haleigh is a member of Pi Beta Phi at Oklahoma Alpha and serves on the executive council as president. On campus, Haleigh also serves as the chair of the Gaylord College of Mass Communication Ambassadors and director of public relations for the winning Glasscock Mortazavi Student Government campaign. Sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation here, Haleigh. After growing up with a speech impediment, she learned the value of hard work and dedication when it came to correcting her speech. Now Haleigh talks to whoever will listen, and that's why she launched her podcast, Hanging with Haleigh. Almost there. Haleigh has also been in the pageant industry for over a decade, holding numerous titles like Miss Oklahoma Teen USA 2022, Miss High School America 2020, and America's Ideal Miss 2023, and is currently serving as a current Miss Virginia volunteer. She has become very passionate about her education reform initiative, Teach Next Gen, and has written 2 public policies in the state of Oklahoma. In her free time, she loves to read, learn how to cook, and travel around the world. Well, that's it for the interview. Thanks for watching us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I mean, is there anything that you'd like to add to that, Haleigh? By the way, welcome back. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. It's so good to be back. I think you kind of covered it all. We can just end it now.
Yeah, we're all done. See you next time. As I mentioned to Haleigh before we jumped on, I was listening to our previous interview, which was a year and a half ago. It was back in April 2023. Given how much you've done, it doesn't seem like a year and a half ago. It seems like 10 years ago. And I remember one of the things that stood out to me was that you were talking about at the dinner table, you would like to, speak your mind, and you got sent away from the dinner table on more than a couple of occasions. So I assume that's well behind us. We're not getting sent away from any dinner tables anymore.
No, unfortunately, I'm still keeping it calm, cool, and collected, and I now work in politics as a account manager and social media manager for Team Thrive, and so that's been a lot of fun getting to have my political outlet. And then when I go home to my roommates, we don't talk anything about politics. It's awesome, and I just get to now separate that part of my life. But I'm always good and fired up for a debate whenever one comes.
Yeah, I do remember after interviewing you the first time, I thought, wow, this is an impressive young woman. And I don't say that to everyone. Some are very perky, some are very friendly, some are very clever, but you really struck me with, I don't know, here's the thing. How would you describe yourself? You know, that pageant question, say, in 3 words, describe yourself. Would outspoken be in there? Like, how would you describe yourself in 3 words?
I would say, my 3 words I always go to are intentional, relatable, and steadfast, and I'm very intentional with the way that I create relationships. I think it's so important to always remember the small things, like people's names, a little fact about them, so you can always go back to them later on, and you can form that small little relationship and connection. Um, Relatable, because I know sometimes it doesn't seem like I'm super relatable based off my resume, but I'm really, really quirky. I'm super easy to get along with, but when it comes to business means business. I'm completely put on a facade, I can say, I guess, and step into that role and that character in my life. But then normal Haleigh is just a college student who's trying to figure out what the next year of her looks like post grad. So that's a relatable thing that all college students go through. And then I'm also very steadfast in my morals and my beliefs. And I think my parents have always done just an amazing job pushing me and grounding me and making sure that I have everything I need to be successful. And so that's kind of what drives me to do everything.
Can we talk about the morals for just a second? Because I've been thinking a lot about parents and how important they are to all of us who are lucky enough to come from a steadfast home, to steal your word. And I know on your podcast, Hanging with Haleigh, I know you interviewed your dad. I listened to that, which was very interesting. I don't know how I'd go with interviewing my parents, but he seemed like an amazing guy, very down to earth, but still very inspirational. And then I think your mum just followed me on Instagram like 5 minutes ago. So can you tell me more about your upbringing? How did your parents go about, instilling morals, beliefs, values in you? Because I think it's super important.
I consider myself very lucky. I grew up in a household where my mom and dad have always stayed the same. They've been together for 30 plus years now and have had such a healthy and stable marriage. And that's something that I hope to one day have whenever I get married and I'm in that stage of my life. But my parents have very much instilled with me with hard work, you can do anything. A little background on my dad: he is a Navy SEAL, or a former Navy SEAL. And so he served. In the armed forces. He went to college, realized he couldn't afford it right out of high school. And so that's why he ended up joining. And then he's like, if I'm going to join, I'm going to do it to the best of my abilities. And that's kind of what drove him to be a SEAL. And then my mom, on the other hand, grew up in a very small town in Texas. Her dad was the superintendent of of his school district. So everyone knew her as, the superintendent's daughter. And so that was always like, she's more shy and reserved. And my dad is very outspoken and outgoing. And so they really do a great job of balancing each other out. And so I feel like I definitely got both of them blended very well.
Yeah.
But growing up, my parents always taught me, if you have a dream, that's great, but set goals to make it a tangible dream, or else it will always just be a dream. And so whenever I was talking to them about pursuing a career in law, they were like, okay, like set these tangible goals for yourself. What does the next 4 years look like for you in high school? The next 4 years look like for you in college? Gap year or
Mm.
no gap year? What type of educational studies will you be pursuing? So that's something that's always driven me my whole life, but they've also taught me the value of hard work. One thing that is really cool about my dad is he grew up in a single parent household. And so he kind of raised his brother while his mom was off working
Wow.
multiple
Okay.
jobs at times. And so he truly knew the value of hard work. He started working at 12 in like different jobs and odd jobs. And so has always worked. All that I've known him, well, obviously my whole life, but he has always worked super hard for everything that he's gotten. And so that's kind of pushed me and motivated me. I remember bringing a letter in the mail I got from National American Miss, my first ever pageant I did, to my parents' attention. And I'm like, I really want to do this. And they're like, well, if you want to do it, you can raise money for the entry fee. And if you raise money, you can do it. And so I
Yeah.
raised $295 for that entry fee when I was 9 years old. And that kind of kickstarted my pageant journey. And it also taught me, the value of money and the value of hard work at 9 years old. And so if I ever wanted an iPad, they were like, okay, like you can raise the money and you can save your money and you can budget. And so I've also learned a lot of great financial skills from them.
Yeah. Can I ask, do you remember how you managed to raise that money as a 9-year-old? Because I work with a lot of pageant women who are like 20, 30 years old and they can't raise $5, let alone $300. So how did you raise money at 9 years old?
So my parents had a chore system, and so if you do your chores, you get paid a certain amount a week, and so everything was budgeted out. And if you did this chore, they would pay you. So basically, it was them paying my entry fee through the chores that I did around the house and around the neighborhood. I enlisted like my grandma, like I'm like, what chores can I do for you? And she would pay me, and I would save like birthday money. So instead of asking for gifts, I would ask for money donations for my
Right.
pageant. And so that's kind of how everything came to be at 9.
That's super impressive though, at the age of 9. So it started early. Do you happen to know how your father and mother met? Because they sound like very different people, personality-wise, but also, the world of a Navy SEAL. From what little I know about it, doesn't necessarily cross with the teaching industry so much. So how did your parents meet?
So my dad and my mom actually both are chiropractors, and so my dad does more now like land development, because that was actually his first job was in construction. So he kind of went that route after owning and operating his own medical facility and chiropractic practice for a bit. But they met in, I would say, in chiropractic school, but they actually met because my mom took a scuba diving class and my dad was her instructor. And then
All
they
right.
found out later on that they were taking classes and were in a lot of the same classes at Parker College of Chiropractic in Dallas, Texas. So that's kind of how their paths crossed. I think it's really funny because they were both dating other people at the time. And I believe my mom was engaged at one point. And then after everything ended with their relationships, they ended up dating and now they're happily married.
Well, the rest is history. Yeah, I have some experience with engagements and not working out so well. Sometimes I feel like getting engaged is the best way to end a relationship. But moving on from my own sad story. I mean, I didn't know, didn't remember that your dad was a Navy SEAL. Obviously, there's been quite a lot of former Navy SEALs go on to do amazing things in terms of coaching or becoming authors or things like that. I'm just curious in terms of whenever you prepare for a pageant and you're doing physical preparation, do you ever go to your dad for advice? Because if there's one thing that Navy SEALs are known for, it's how hardcore they are and how many people drop out trying to be one. So does he give you a few like, push ups here, squats there?
It's actually really funny because he's very supportive with everything. He's not that type of dad to be like, you need to do 10 more push-ups or 10 more sit-ups. But there was this one time we had an outfit made and it was made too small. And so I had to lose weight for it. And he chased me on a like gator little like four-wheeler thing and down the street. So he was just on it riding behind me as I'm running. And I hate running. And I think last time we talked about the hot girl walk, and I'm more of a hot
Yeah.
girl walker. And so the fact that I was running down the street and he was chasing me was not ideal, and I did not appreciate it. But I did fit in the outfit that I had to wear the next week, so I guess it worked out.
I mean, was this a regular occurrence? Because no matter how much you
No,
run, it's probably not going to be one run to fit. I That
no,
is a very weird picture to have in my mind. Were you screaming? Were you was it, or how would it have looked from the outside?
I
This
think he
man
was
chasing
maybe
you.
going like I think he was maybe going like 5 miles an hour, or like even
Oh,
like 3 miles an hour. So he was not going fast at all, and I was dying in front of him.
yeah. I mean, 5 miles an hour might not sound like a lot, but when you hate running, which I also hate running, that's an. I think I would just be upset that you were making me run more than anything else. But last time I spoke to you, so as I said, it was April 2023. Now I can't exactly remember where it was in your incredibly dense life story. I think it was just before you won America's Ideal Miss. I could be
Yes.
wrong. So can you just kind of catch me up on what you've done since we last talked? Because I've tried to piece it together, and obviously I follow you on social, but I can't keep up. I give up. So can you just tell me what you've been up to apart from the bio?
Yes. So I've been honestly really diving into my education the past year and a half. We spoke right, I think the week after I gave up my Miss Oklahoma Teen
Mm,
USA title. I had no intentions of competing. And it kind of the day of the deadline came for America's Ideal Miss. And I was like, why don't I just sign up? And so I signed up and everything ended out, working for the best. I had one of the most amazing years with Neely Musgrave, who's the national director, and she's a very close friend of mine now. And I got my first experience being in a miss role. I'd always been in a
mm,
teen or a junior teen role, so really stepping into that portion of pageantry, and setting the example of, what does it mean to be a miss? What does it mean to pour into all of my littles this year? And I can safely say, like, I have a phenomenal relationship with every single one of my littles that I had that year. I got the opportunity to travel to, I think, like 15 or 16 states and still maintain a 4.0 in college and
wow.
traveled pretty much every weekend for Ideal, and it was amazing. And then the opportunity came for me to compete in Miss Virginia Volunteer because I was looking at adding a third major for my senior year because I honestly only have 6 hours left at the University of Oklahoma, but I'm not ready to graduate. So I'm like, I'll just split it 3 and 3, and then I can take my research, my campaigns class, and everything will be well. And I was looking into different programs, and I saw that Liberty offers this law and policy course, and it's basically law school for undergrads. So I'm taking torts for
Right.
undergrads, contract law for undergrads. So it's really helping me prepare for law school. And I also wanted to make sure before I go and spend the law school money and fully invest in this next step of my life that this was what I wanted to do. And I can safely say, after taking a couple of the classes that I have taken, this is exactly what I want to do. It's what I'm very passionate about, and it's the stuff that I don't mind doing the 200 pages of reading for, which is not always fun, but I do genuinely enjoy it. But that's kind of what's been going on with me professionally. Personally, I have been really investing on my campus because it is my last year. So finding different
Mhm.
mentorship opportunities, as the chair of Gaylord College of Mass Communications, I have the opportunity to lead a team of 42 ambassadors. And so we focus on internal and external recruitment for the college. Yesterday, I was actually in Tulsa, Oklahoma, doing a recruitment event. I have a recruitment event next week in Dallas, and at the end of the month at Houston, that they traveled me to for all these different events.
Right.
And then for Pi Phi, I serve as president. My term ends in late November, and I've had an amazing time. I lead 332 amazing women who have pushed me to be a leader, have taught me a lot of amazing skills like patience and understanding and leading with love and compassion, but still holding members accountable. So, a lot of great life skills have been learned. And I guess also since we last talked, I now live with six of my best friends. So, it's seven of us in my house, and I love it. There's always something going on here. And so, that's kind of just a small little synopsis. Oh, and I went to the UK. Um,
I was going to say, yeah, you forgot to
yes.
mention that. So how did that happen?
Oh my gosh. So, it's actually quite funny because on a whim, of course, of a lot of my ideas come. The last day of the deadline, I signed up to go on this London trip, and I emailed the professors right after, and I was like, "I'm really looking forward to studying abroad with you. I already paid for everything, but I can't make the classes in the States because I'm traveling. So what can I do to make up these classes?" And they were really great with working with my schedule. So I did all the classes before we left for London. And then we were there for 20 days with my program. And so in those 20 days, we were in London, Bath, Bristol, and Cardiff.
Wow.
And we studied mass media and media studies of British systems. And so we went to like the BBC, and we went to go see Coco, which is a famous event venue. It's where like Beatles and they have Madonna's like disco ball there still, so that's kind of cool.
Wow. Okay.
And then I also met with some international PR agencies, and that was truly life changing because I got to see that I don't want to work in PR for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
So that was a really nice moment of clarity. Even though it was abroad, I would wanted to have worked in international crisis communication. So that was really nice to kind of figure that out, but I got to do a lot of solo traveling too. So I actually went to Copenhagen, Denmark, and it's beautiful. I love Danish people. I've decided they're all just so kind and so welcoming, and I can see why it's one of the happiest countries in the world,
Mm.
and it's one of the safest. So that was a lot of fun getting to solo travel there. And I ended up staying in London a week after my group left to explore, and I met with a bunch of different public relations firms while I was over there and had a couple job interviews,
Hmm.
and also a lot of informational interviews just so I can get some clarity of what I want to do when I'm older. And so it was a really great trip.
Well, I'm just curious, what made you realize that PR wasn't the path you wanted to pursue? Because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, last time I think you were interested in pursuing PR. So what
Mhm.
was it exactly that you went, okay, this path is not for me?
I think it came more of I want to do more of the logistic sides. I want to do more of the speaking on behalf of clients instead of creating. I'm not
Right.
creative. Well, that's a lie. I am creative, but I'm not creative minded, so I don't like see the big vision. I'm very analytical and logical, and so I see where I would fit into public relations, which is research, and
Hmm.
frankly, I hated my research classes. And so I knew that I would not do well in research in like an actual job setting, but I do love working with clients and negotiations, and I do also love finance. And so I worked and I talked with a lot of different business and finance firms. And so I then took that knowledge and I was like, okay, let me narrow down what type of law I want to do. And that helped me discover that I want to do mergers and acquisitions.
And how did you find London, just as an American traveling to London? I mean, I've been both to the south of America and spent a deal of time in London and Cardiff and Bath and not Bristol
Mhm.
yet. All those places you mentioned, they're not really the same. I mean, weather-wise, especially, the accent's a bit
Yeah.
different. How did you find the UK?
Oh my gosh, I loved London. I actually really debated on moving there after this year. I am taking a gap year, and so two of my best friends are moving to London for a year to pursue their master's. So I thought about moving with them and trying to get a work visa and work there for a year and then come back for law school, or even 2 years and then come back. And it's still an option on the table. It's just not as high of a priority as mine anymore. But it was one of the best experiences of my life, and I love the tube system. The underground tubes are my favorite thing ever. I'm not a great driver, and so just getting to, like, hop on the tube and then you're all the way across town was awesome, and then there's no traffic. But I really enjoyed it, and I think I also enjoyed it because 50% of people who live in London or have some type of business are not from the UK. So it was a huge international hub
Yeah.
where I got to experience so many different cultures, so many different aspects, and so many different perspectives. And so I love just talking to random people, meeting new friends, and like really making those connections because we truly have nothing like it here in the States. I mean,
Mm.
some people will compare New York, but New York is nothing like London.
I've been to New York. Well, to clarify, I spent 24 hours in New York, and New York
That's
definitely
enough.
is. Yeah. She says, hustle, outspoken, as I said, hustle and bustle. But London, I think one of the things that really is a melting pot of different
Mhm.
cultures. I mean, I'd be curious, as a silly example, what did you eat whilst you were over in London? Because in London, you have access to, I mean, like they say, the national
Everything.
British food is curry, which you probably wouldn't have thought before you headed over there. But what, you ate everything? What are some of the things you tried?
Okay, I will be honest, I'm not a huge fan of curry. I really gave it a shot. It's not
Okay,
for me.
that's fine.
I was not a huge fan of fish and chips. Um, so I honestly just kept eating a lot of international food. I loved going to all the different street markets and
Yeah.
like getting like the gourmet sandwiches and like the gourmet pastas and stuff because here in the States, I'm severely gluten free. Like gluten makes me so sick. But over there in London, since they have stricter food requirements, I was like eating all the gluten in the world. It was awesome. And so honestly, I ate pretty much, I tried everything, but
Right.
I think I just really did not like curry.
It's interesting you mentioned you didn't like the curry, you didn't like the fish and chips, which is surprising because so many people love fish and chips. I will say, I'll put in a plug. Australia has the best fish and chips in the world. Uh,
Okay.
The
I
UK
guess I
has
have to
nothing
try it.
on
Have
it.
you ever had the mushy peas or the mashed peas?
Okay, so hot take: mushy peas to me are just overcooked peas. I don't really understand them. I know the Brits really love them, but I'm like, hang on, you just overcooked your peas to death, and now you're calling it mushy peas. They're overcooked peas. It'd be like taking a piece of steak, char grilling it to death, and then saying, "Oh, it's flame grilled." No, it's burnt. So,
It's
I mean,
burnt.
so you like the mushy peas? Just to clarify, no, it
No.
wasn't.
No, I was not a
Okay,
fan. I like regular peas. The mushy peas were just it's also a texture thing, like, it was just weird.
have you? Dare I ask? Did you try jellied eels?
Oh, no. I don't think I would ever try that, to be honest.
That comes back from a long, long, long time ago, when they used to. I can't remember where they got the eels from. I think it might have actually been from the Thames, which I don't think in this day and age you'd eat anything that came out from the Thames. But they would chop the
Mm-mm.
eel up and cook it in its own jelly, so the bones would, I think, form a jelly, and then they put it in a jar and you serve it cold. So
Oh,
it's like
my.
these chunks of. Okay, yeah, we're not going there. But I mean, so how long did you spend over in London overall? Sounds like you spent a fair bit of time.
I was there a month, and so I think I was actually in the city of London for 3 weeks, and then we traveled on the road to hit, Bristol for 3 days, Cardiff for a day, and then Bath for a day.
Right. And I'm curious, after your experience, I mean, you already talked about some of the differences in the city itself and the food. What would you say the differences in people between, you guys over in the States and the people over in the UK?
Well, I will say in the US, when people talk fast, you can still understand them. Once you get over to the UK and you get the mixture of the accents, and you have the Scottish people coming from the north, and like there's a huge mix of cultures, they start talking fast, and it's like, whoa, 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 like slow down, please. I can't follow your conversation. Um, but overall, the people there were awesome. I had the best experience. Like I said, everyone there was so welcoming. It's just a completely different culture. And one thing that I think America does is we have a culture of work, 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 and you don't have fun. You are like dedicated to your jobs once you're in a job
Mm,
for at least 10 to 15 years before you can have any type of fun. And one thing that I loved about them is everything was so much slower paced, but they were still as productive. And I think it's
mm,
because they allow themselves to have those moments of break and moments of rest and have a more relaxed work setting. So they enjoyed being at work and they enjoyed being productive and they want to be more productive because they have these little things that give them a breath. And so one thing was I loved taking evening walks and just seeing people out at the different pubs and the different restaurants,
Mm.
just sitting out on the terrace, like enjoying each other's company or just like living their best lives alone. Like that made me so happy. So whenever I was there for my week alone, I really did enjoy just like going out and sitting and having a book, like reading a book out in the street and just like taking in everything.
Yeah, they do have a very big pub culture. Very often going down to the pub for drinks after work.
Yes.
How was the weather for you though?
It was honestly, it wasn't that bad. I went in May to June, so it
Yeah.
only rained, I think, 5 or 6 days that we were there, but when it rained, it was
Wow.
like torrential downpour. Some days it was a little chilly, some days it was hot where I was wearing, like, a tank top and shorts because it was, like, 85 degrees, and I was like, "This is nice," and then the next day would be torrential downpour. So, it was just very bipolar, but also I'm from Texas where it can be 100 degrees and then it can be 20 degrees the next day, and you never know.
I was going to say you found it hot in London when, I was over in Texas, every day was 110. Forget 100, and I'm from Sydney. I
Mhm,
like the heat. But 110, that was like standing in an oven. I never felt hot in the UK. I will say, I don't know if you notice this, when it does get to about 80 degrees, or that's a heat wave for them. And they
mhm.
all run to the beach, super excited,
Yes.
wearing tank tops and all that stuff. And then they all come back looking like a cooked lobster because they've all gone
Mhm.
bright red because they're all sunburnt because they never see the sun more than 2 days in the
Yeah.
year. So I'm
What was
surprised
really
that you
cool.
found it hot.
Yeah, it was really cool being in Denmark and seeing, like, all the college students, like, lay out their towels on, like, the different docks, and, there was one part I visited, it's by, like I forgot the name of the mermaid, but it's by this mermaid in Copenhagen, and there was just people laying out, and it was beautiful outside. I mean, it was, like, 70, so it was a little chilly for me, so I had on, like, a long sleeve shirt and some shorts, but,
Yeah.
like, they were out there, like, fully tanning, and I was like, "This is awesome." Like, this is a really great just day for you guys. It's a little chilly for me.
It sounds like you had a pretty transformative experience.
I did. It was what I needed, exactly when I needed it. I talk a lot about facing burnout because I do so much. And
Mm,
at the end of my junior year, I was facing so much burnout. I just came off of a 23-hour semester, 21-hour semester, and I dedicated so much of my time and energy into everything that I was doing that I didn't leave enough bandwidth for myself. And
yeah.
I really realized that. And so going to Europe, it was just a nice way to unplug and refill my cup before I came back and I
Mhm.
could be productive again. And now I say that being in 30 academic hours this semester, so I'm definitely about to run on empty here in the next couple weeks, especially with all the appearances I have lined up, which I love doing and I love my job as Miss Virginia volunteer and I love everything that I do. But I also have to remind myself that I do have to slow down.
As someone who took 34 hours or almost 40 hours in his final semester because he overloaded, I certainly can sympathize with your situation. I have no sympathy for art students who complain about their 5 or 9 contact hours a semester.
Yes.
We certainly didn't see eye to eye. But on this subject, I think we should talk about time management and
Hmm.
maybe not just how you manage your time, but maybe how it's changed over the years. Because it's one thing to be super productive, super efficient, which you've already mentioned, but we're all human at the end of the day. No matter how busy, how driven you are, we do need a chance to recharge.
Hmm.
So I'm just curious, how do you manage your time because you are doing so much? And how do you actually bake in time for yourself so you're not just running your battery out?
Yeah, so I used to do everything on a written planner, and that worked for me for my first 2 years of college, and then junior year, I was really struggling with my written planner. I would just not write things in, or I wouldn't schedule enough time, and
Mm,
I couldn't fully see, like, a line out of my day, and it just became very unproductive for me, and so this year, on my whole I'm back from Europe. I'm going to recenter myself and set myself up for a great semester. I switched over to Google Calendar because I am
okay.
a staunch hater of electronics. I do live on my phone and on my computer, but that does not mean I like to. So I did transfer everything over electronically, and it's made the biggest help in the world, especially because I can see out my days. I can color code them. It's really pretty. And I also still have my paper checklist where I will literally
Okay.
sit down the night before and I will write out a checklist. So I'll put on my priorities, what is like what I call a mini priority, so not as important, but would still like to get done, and then my negotiables down at the
Hmm.
bottom. so I can go throughout the day and mark it off, because if I don't mark it off, I don't feel like I've had a productive day. So I literally love to take my highlighter and be like, check, check, like everything's done. Um, and then how it goes with scheduling time for myself, I will block in time periods to go work out. And I'll give myself like 2 hours in the morning or 2 hours in the evening just to go work out. I will schedule a no phone time. So I'll schedule like an hour where I won't have my phone on me, and I won't answer any text messages. And
Hmm.
then I will also schedule time just to study and then just to read. And then I'll also sub subhead them with what subjects I need to be studying and what I need to be reading. So then it also keeps me on track. And then if I don't get it done in that time, and unfortunately we'll just tack on to the end of my day, which isn't always great because then I'll be up to 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, and that's not very helpful when you have a 7 a.m. wake up call. So just like really trying to stay on top of myself in time management. But I will say I keep having to delete and re-download TikTok because I will find myself just mindfully not like mindlessly scrolling for hours, and I'm like, I need to get off this app.
I remember you talking about social media and in our last interview, and I think you kind of had a love-hate relationship, or maybe it was just hate-hate relationship. But I mean, it doesn't surprise to hear for me to hear from you that you're not such a huge fan of electronics. But I mean, the thing is, everything in this day and age is electronic. Whether it's social media, you got to use your laptop, or whether it's AI. So I'm just like, how do you find your balance if you're having to use something so much, and you move from the paper system to Google Calendar, which probably was overdue. I don't know how you would be able to fit your life into a paper calendar. You
Yeah.
post-it notes everywhere, all over the wall sort of thing. But how do you, let me ask you, why are you not a huge fan of electronics? Because a lot of people your age, spend their entire life on their phones.
Yeah.
So why not you?
I think for me, it's been really hard to see my generation just like slowly turn away from like face to face value in relationships. I feel
Mm,
like overall, as a society, we have become more awkward when it comes to face interactions. And as someone who does want to work in a field where I will be dealing with people every day and dealing with a bunch of strong personalities, I think one thing that has always helped me is learning how to master face to face communication and interaction.
mm,
And I think now our society has shied away from that. So they're like, oh, let me just like use an emoji to describe how I'm feeling instead of actually talk it out. And I feel like that is what has led to a lot of problems in our society, like high divorce rates and um, differences in communication, differences in values, because you're not actually communicating that and explaining how you feel or why you feel that way. I've
mm,
always been a huge staunch supporter of therapy and just always expressing yourself and letting yourself be known, because if you keep it bottled up forever, then you're gonna eventually one day pop, and it's going to be really messy if you're not there to like pick up the pieces and if you don't know how to
yeah.
handle it properly. And so I think that's why I've slowly seen myself turn away from technology. And now with AI, it's been very eye-opening. I'm trying to learn AI all at the same time too, because you have to know it, just frankly. Like I use it a lot for I will convert my notes that I take in class to an outline, and I'll have it
Mhm.
create practice quizzes and practice questions that I can see. So I'm trying to use it for those strengths, whereas I know like a lot of my friends that will write their entire papers and they'll turn it in.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
what are you learning in that aspect? And so from an educational standpoint, and as someone who really values their education, I've seen the damper and I've seen the struggle that a lot of teachers have when it comes to regulating it. And technology is a huge part to blame. And I hope that one day technology does not take over my job. So I'm really trying to fight against it right now.
All I'll say is good luck with that, Haley. Technology is coming for you no matter where you run to.
Yes.
It's interesting you mentioned, even like going back to when we first spoke. In that time period, AI has just progressed leaps and bounds. The
Yeah.
latest version of ChatGPT that came out can converse to you like a human, like a real
Hmm.
human. So you don't have to wait for it; it talks to you. And I went, okay, how about pageant interview practice? Because so many girls struggle with pageant interview. So I told ChatGPT to basically interview me like a pageant coach or pageant panel would. So I was doing this pageant interview with ChatGPT. It was giving me
That's
feedback, and it
crazy.
was actually really, really good. It was saying, "Oh, I like how you said this, and you did a really good job of highlighting this." And so I was like, "I'm going to tell everyone I know." Not that you don't need a
Wow.
pageant coach, but when it comes time to practice, just pick up this phone and you can do it hands free as well. So when you're driving or running, You can be practicing
Yeah.
interview questions and out loud, not in your head. So there are some things it's really good for. The example of your
Mhm.
friends using it to write papers is obviously not great, but it's definitely here to stay. So I'm curious, with all this time management that you've got going on, I mean, last time we finished the interview by me asking you where you saw yourself in 5 years. And just again, you're doing so many different things. Has that vision for where you want to head to changed at all?
I would say yes and no. I think we talked, I was still wanting to go to law school and wanting to pursue
Mm,
that type of a degree, wanting to travel. I didn't really know what exactly I wanted to do in the future, but I think now I'm very set in my ways of what exactly I want to do. I think the only thing that's uncertain is what I'm doing right out of college. So I
yeah.
have my 5-year plan minus the 1 year, like the first year out. But hopefully, I will win Miss Volunteer America. Fingers crossed. And then I can spend the year serving the Salvation Army, St. Jude's, and all of our national partners, but also have the opportunity to travel around the United States. But if that doesn't work out, I'll probably end up as a paralegal somewhere, um, working an over 9 to 5 before I go to law school, trying to get as much experience as possible. But I think for the most part, I've really done a great job, and I will commend my parents for this too. They've always done a great job instilling, like, setting those tangible goals for yourself and really making sure that vision will align with you as you grow older. And so I think starting out in college, I have the same vision for myself as I am
Mm.
ending college. So,
I think we should get your parents to create a parenting course because
oh, I'm
honestly,
sure my dad would love that.
it sounds, and I'm not even joking. Like it's being a parent is, I think, the hardest, and
Mhm,
in many cases, the most thankless, and obviously the worst paid job in the world. I mean, obviously, you watch your children growing up. I don't have kids, so I wouldn't know, but watching your child grow up has to be deeply fulfilling. So, I'm halfway
mhm.
joking, but I mean, you mention your parents often, and I really love that because I think having a how important has it been growing up? I mean, challenges that we all go through, especially your generation, and then we had COVID. Let's hope something like that
Yeah.
doesn't happen again. It's been a really tough time, I think, for your generation trying to finish high school and then going into college, where you had this
Mhm.
expectation, oh, we're going to have this party here, we're going to have this, that, and then you couldn't do any of it. How important has that seemingly amazing relationship you have with your parents
Yeah.
been? That's must be pretty fundamental.
I have been so blessed, and, a lot of people come to college and I like to use the term they go off the rails. They
Mm,
fall into bad habits, or they aren't getting their work done, or their priorities aren't lining up. And I've been very fortunate to have, I would say that my parents growing up were stricter, but they
yeah.
didn't hold me at such a tight leash where I wasn't able to express myself or try new things, or they didn't push me out of my comfort zone. And so I'm very thankful for the values and the line that they always ask me, like, is it worth it? Is it going to matter tomorrow? Is it going to matter in 10 years? Is it going to matter in 30
Mm,
years? Is what they always ask me. And so I kind of use that mentality now with every decision that I make. I'm like, oh, okay, how does this decision impact tomorrow? How does this decision impact
yeah.
others and my 10, 30 year plan? Um, so I think that has really helped, but I think my relationship with my parents has truly helped me just develop as a person as well. I remember I was breaking up with one of my ex-boyfriends, and I have such a great relationship with my dad, and so I called him up and he drove up to Norman to have lunch with me, and I kind of was able to express to him, like, what I was feeling. He helped me, like, come together with, like, what I should say and just, like, give me a guy's perspective, and I'm very fortunate to have that relationship with my dad because I know
Mm,
that can kind of be an awkward conversation for some. But my dad has always been very supportive of me and of my goals and dreams, and always wants the best for me. And I think he also taught me, how I should be treated by
mm.
potential people that I'm dating and by friends. And so by always like seeking his guidance, I think it's always kept me on task as well.
Definitely need a parenting course. I think we we definitely need to make this happen. I know plenty of people who would be very interested in how both of your parents have managed to do that. Now, just to change tack slightly, I was going through your social media trying to figure out what you've been up to. As I said, it was hopeless. I couldn't do it.
Mhm.
Beyond me, but I did see you were on, I think, another interview somewhere, and you were talking about, because last time we talked about standard testing. and
Mhm.
how much you disliked it, and I certainly dislike it. And then I seem to remember you talking about, I think you enacted or signed into, I don't know the exact terminology, but assessment-based protocols
Yes.
versus standardized testing. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so one of the public policies that I'm very passionate about is promoting assessment-based courses and testing over standardized testing. So I truly believe tests like the ACT and SAT and LSAT don't really measure your knowledge.
Mm,
And it's something that we as students put a lot of weight into. I remember I took the ACT 4 times, and my practice tests were never the same score as my actual tests. I always scored lower, and that honestly left a huge damper on my self-esteem and my academic performance because I felt like I was never worth it enough academically because of my standardized test score. And I was like,
yeah.
this isn't showing how intelligent I am and how smart I am. It's about beating a test. It's not about testing your knowledge. And so what my public policy explains and implements is assessment based. So you take a assessment in the beginning, kind of assessing where they were the grade before and some of the new things that they will be learning in that grade. And then
Right.
there will be another assessment Christmas break right before they get out for the second semester of things that they've learned that semester and things that they learned in the prior year. Still keeping it up and introducing some new topics. So then you can see the gauge of where they're at. Because I
Hmm.
truly believe if you don't meet students where they're at, they're never going to learn. And so if they feel like they don't understand simple math and multiplication and division, and that's what they're struggling with, they obviously can't go and learn Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. So it's about seeing those learning gaps and then adjusting your curriculum to fulfill those learning gaps and being flexible and helping those kids learn and succeed. And then at the end of the course, after you finish,
Mm,
reassessing and being like, what have they learned this year? What topics are mastered? What topics still need work? And then passing that data on to the teachers in the next grade. And I think that is how you really teach students. You have to meet them where they're at. My grandma, I come up from a very long line of educators, and my grandma was a teacher and a principal. And then after she retired from being a principal, she went and taught teachers how to teach kids in poverty because teaching kids in poverty is different than teaching kids who come from a middle class or an upper class
yeah.
family. And they face a lot more mental and emotional challenges and have different hardships too. And so, because my grandma grew up in poverty, it made her the best teacher for it. And so, she explained her personal experiences, things that she implemented when she was a teacher and the impacts that it made on students. So she's
Mm,
taught everything from um, those in special institutions for deaf and blindness to kindergartners to middle schoolers. She's taught everything and she has taken that knowledge and loves to share it with people. And so that's kind of what she's also shared with me and put on my heart. And since Oklahoma is ranked now 49th in the nation for education, it's really unfortunate to see these students fall behind in a lot of our schools. I think over 50% of Oklahoman students are considered underprivileged. So,
well, that's quite a shocking statistic. Do you think the teachers need more help in order to be able to help the students? Because I've interviewed, I was considering being a teacher at one point, and then I just realized there would be so many, I had my hands tied in so many ways by the system that I didn't feel like that was the best way I could make an impact. But there are a lot of very hardworking, well meaning young women in particular working in education. And to implement what you outlined, or just to improve the system, do you feel like they need more help or more support or more resources to be able to
mhm.
really do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like there's a staunch difference between the top 20 states in education and the
Hmm.
bottom 30. There's a huge difference here in the United States. And unfortunately, a lot of our states are education is mostly funded by the state. It does have some federal
Right.
funding, but there's just not enough. I know teachers are severely underpaid. There's only so much that they can do with their resources.
Mm.
And, for the people who are equipping our next generation to really struggle to make ends meet and to get supplies for their classroom and find resources. I work in, well, I don't actually work. I go and I volunteer every week through Jefferson Elementary School in Norman, Oklahoma. I go in and I read to kindergartners. And so all these kindergartners come from broken homes, or English is their second language, or they face some type of learning hardship. And so getting the
Mm.
opportunity just to read to them and be a friend to them for 30 minutes out of their day has left such a huge impact on me. I've been able to do this for the past 3 years, and I'm going to be doing this all of my senior year. So I'm definitely going to
Wow.
miss these kids, but seeing how much they grow throughout that you're with them, I think that is what is so impactful about it.
Mm.
But unfortunately, teachers just don't have that support and that help here, especially in Oklahoma. And Texas is ranked like 35th or 36th, so it's still bottom 30. And so just finding those resources and hopefully one day having a representative or a governor or even like a president who's really staunch on education. I think the Bush administration, especially Barbara Bush, did a great
Mhm.
job promoting childhood literacy, but it shouldn't just end with one administration.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be a partisan issue. I mean, I think every politician should be. It has to be one of the priorities in funding
Yes.
for any country,
Mhm.
because they literally are the future. I think it's interesting because I remember last time speaking to you, you had a speech impediment growing up, and I seem to remember you saying you'd won your first pageant. I think it was at the age of 13, and then someone told you, some judge or something told you, if you never overcome
Yes.
that, you never do well. And that kind of fueled you to overcome your
Mhm.
speech impediment. And I remember you said it took you 6 months, where people told you it would take 2 years. How does it feel being on the other side of that now, where you're going into school reading to these kids? I mean, you must resonate if they have like learning difficulties.
Mhm.
It must be beautiful to be able to resonate with them, go, well, I had difficulties growing up as well.
Yes, and I think that also plays more into the relatability aspect that I was talking about
Mm,
earlier. I think it's so easy to see a title holder come in with a crown and a sash, or
mm,
even just an older student coming in and helping a younger student and be like, I can never be like them. That's not something that I see myself ever doing, because that's something that I fully believed myself. I thought I was never going to be able to communicate effectively, especially being 13 and having my dreams absolutely crushed right in front of me by a grown man. Um, that was something that was really hard for me at first, and that was a hard pill to swallow. And so just by being someone who is relatable, going in and always
mm.
showing kindness and compassion, and meeting people where they're at is so important, because you can't set these unrealistic expectations for them, and you can't set your unrealistic expectations for yourself. And so it's about meeting them where they're at, assessing, and really building that relationship, because a lot of learning is done out of relationship building.
How did that experience not scar you?
I think it has, to be honest. I am
Well, I mean,
very,
you remember
very
it.
aware. Yes, but I think for me, I'm always a little bit self-conscious of my speech, and that will always be something that I will always personally deal with, and that will always be an insecurity for me, especially because sometimes when I get super anxious, one thing that I have noticed with being so high functioning the past 4 years, I have dealt with severe anxiety, imposter syndrome, and
Right.
sometimes it does affect me in social settings. And so learning how to manage that has been really hard. But when I get super anxious, my speech impediment comes out because I'm not thinking about the words that I'm saying. Or if I get tongue
Right.
tied, I always have to go back and correct myself multiple times. And it's like, oh, you can hear her lisp or her stutter come back. And so
Right.
I never want to be at a place where people see me and they're like, oh, there's something wrong with her. And there's
Yeah.
something wrong with her speech. And so that has been a really huge damper on a lot of the things that I've done, just because I have to be so much more aware and I'm very conscious about it, and I can't just let myself roam free. But I think that's also helped me in turning my passion into power and being able to effectively communicate.
Yeah, it sounds like you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. I mean, obviously, you're doing so much. I think it's very interesting that you maybe didn't do so well in the standardized testing, and yet here you are, high functioning and doing so many amazing things. I mean, if nothing else, that will show that there are deficiencies in the standardized testing system.
Mhm,
But I mean, the sash you're wearing, so Miss Virginia Volunteer, I hadn't heard of this organization, I think, until I saw you wearing the sash.
mhm.
So, can you tell me more about it? Because I love the idea of, well, I love volunteering. I love philanthropy and a very grassroots, because I've seen you traveling around doing so many things. And
Yeah.
of course, signing a giant check is one thing, money is important. But actually getting, I mean, as you said multiple times, relatable. I think it's so important that our title holders go visit the young, the underprivileged, the ones who are struggling, and say, you know what, someday, not that you could become me, because we're not that egotistical, but meet them where they're at, as you said,
Mhm.
and really lift them up, because I really think that's the biggest job of a pageant title holder, is to inspire those around them. So give me an idea, like what's involved in the system, how did you get into it, how have you found it, and all the crazy things that you're doing with it.
Yeah, so the Miss Volunteer America system is a newer system. And I actually got the opportunity this past summer to go and watch their national pageant and watch Berkeley Bryant, who is Miss Volunteer America currently, be crowned. And so they just crowned Berkeley's their third national title holder. It started out of the state of Tennessee. So when
Okay.
Miss America happened and they didn't have a Tennessee title holder, that was because the Tennessee board there was a big plethora of drama. They ended up pulling
Okay.
out from the Miss America organization, and they started the Miss Volunteer or Miss Tennessee Volunteer Organization
Mm,
with the mission of serve and so serve is their initiatives that every title holder and every local title holder, state holder has, and so mine is Teach Next Gen, so it's my education reform platform. But the Miss Volunteer America organization really goes around and empowers youth and it empowers teens and young women to be passionate about what they are serving and go out in their community
mm,
and serve it. And so their national partners are the Salvation Army in St. Jude. So I've gotten to do a lot so far with the Salvation Army. I've gotten to travel all over Virginia and meet with different Salvation Armies and see their missions and work with them. I've been to a human trafficking and domestic violence shelter, to a homeless shelter. I'm currently working with some in Oklahoma City while I'm here in Norman, finishing up my degree, working with some here and in North Texas. And so trying to make that national as well. But overall, the Miss Volunteer America organization is bringing a lot of glamour back into pageantry. I feel like we've seen a lot
mm.
of turmoil, especially in the Miss Universe, Miss USA, Miss
Yeah.
America systems. All these systems are popping up, and it's hard to find a good fit now because there's so many systems to choose
Mm,
from. And so I'm probably going to end up retiring after this. I keep saying I know I'm going to retire from pageantry, but I will probably end up retiring after this. And so I'm trying to give it my all. And I've never had a service based title before. And so, really having this opportunity to serve those around me, to serve not only my community here in Oklahoma and serve my community in Virginia and Texas, but really take this all over the nation has been something that's been a lot of fun for me and very eye opening. And I've always had a heart for philanthropy. And so
mm.
getting to actually live that out and seeing our national title holder, Miss Berkeley Bryant, work so hard has been something that has been really inspiring to me and has just pushed me as a state title holder to work just as hard as her. Because I truly believe if you want to be a national title holder, if you want to be a state title holder, you need to start living like it now. And so
Yeah.
it starts with making the appearances and going out of your way to make those connections. I actually get to do a lot with Virginia Amtrak, which is so fun. I never really rode a train before this year. And so now I get to ride a train all over Virginia, shoot some fun content. And I love working with Amtrak. And it's been a lot of fun, a big joy. I love trains. And so that's been a really cool experience that I never thought I would have.
That's so sort of left of center. I've never heard anyone talking about Amtrak in any of the interviews I've done. I mean, I have to say, I'm going to take the clip of where you said you're going to retire, and on our next interview, when you have another title, I'm just going to say, Haleigh, you remember saying this? It's like, so what
Yeah.
happened? I mean, I don't believe any pageant girl who says they're going to retire. I do have to say that the work you're doing and your national title holder, it sounds amazing. And I think it's sorely needed. And I think the idea of bringing glam to it as well, because I don't think it should be one or the other, because I think it's not
No,
as
it
good
needs
as
to
when
be
you bring
both.
the two. Yeah, when you bring the two together, I think it's greater than the sum of its parts. Um,
Mhm,
you mentioned a human trafficking and domestic violence situation. I was going to ask, when you do all these appearances, obviously it's physically tiring, it's grueling,
mhm.
but I got to imagine it also does help fill your cup up when you're giving back to other people, because you can see the difference you're making. But when you said the human trafficking, that how did that impact you when you see people who are being
Yeah.
traded around the world like livestock?
So when I went and visited the shelter there, we didn't visit with any residents that were there. We visited with
Right.
the staff, and they kind of went over what they do here at the Salvation Army. And what that specific shelter did, and how they
Hmm.
only ran off of donations. And so they were talking about how they only had one towel and one pair of bed sheets. And usually, like when someone leaves, they give them that towel and like their bed sheet that's theirs, so they can leave with something because they come in with nothing. But they can only
Yeah.
function off of donations. So it's not like they can go buy towels for everyone and bed sheets for everyone. So usually it's like a bed sheet and a towel per family or per person.
Wow.
And there's sometimes they don't have any because they only run off of donations. And so people are very generous when it comes holiday season, just because I feel like we think about it more and
Mm.
they, not saying people aren't generous all year round, but they see a big drop in donations when it comes to the spring and summer months. So those are usually the months where they severely struggle. So just a little PSA to everyone out there, just
Mm.
remember that the holiday season is not just a season for giving. Every season is a season for giving to those who need it most. And so you never know where your donations end up and whose hands they end up in, but just know
Yeah.
that they can be life changing.
Yeah, it's really tough because there's a lot of organizations that are doing really great work, but I feel like they're so busy doing the great work, they don't have time to publicize it. And it's also a
Hmm.
very awkward conversation because I was also going to ask, you're doing this volunteer work, voluntary work, as is your national title holder. And sometimes I find it a bit difficult to balance. Okay, I'm doing the voluntary work, but I need to post it on social because if it didn't
Hmm.
happen, if it's not on social, then it didn't happen.
Exactly. That's
And
been a
I find that a
personal battle
big
of mine.
well, let's dig into that because I also have the same
Yeah.
problem as like some. I'm not going to name any names, but I saw the moment it really came to my attention was a girl over here in Australia. They were trying to count how many appearances they were doing, and it was becoming like a competition. You did 100, I'll do 200, but not all appearances are equal. And she ended up going to McDonald's, wearing her crown and sash in McDonald's, and counting that as an appearance in some way. And I just look at that, go, okay, we've gone past the point of lunacy here. Yes, you're wearing your crown and sash, but I've also know some very good friends who make a point of being very tactful when they
Hmm.
wear, the official garb, because it's like the people around you are going through really difficult things sometimes.
Yeah.
And the last thing they need is some Instagram influencer, posing and doing all that stuff. So tell me about
Mhm.
your own viewpoint on this. I'd be fascinated to hear.
Yeah, I think it's for me, it has always been hard to publicize service because I truly believe, and my
Mm,
parents have always instilled in me that self service is selfless,
yeah.
and to always lead with a servant's heart and lead with the values in the Bible. I'm very deeply rooted in Christianity, and so I always have had a hard time when I volunteer, like, oh, like someone to come take a photo of me by the sign with my sash on, just because it always is a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah.
And so setting up I make sure I set up different appearances where I go as Miss Virginia volunteer and I'm wearing my sash and wearing my crown. I'm doing these interactive appearances. And then there's some where I will just wear my Miss Virginia volunteer t-shirt and I'll go in with no sash and no crown. And it's just being
Mm,
aware,
yeah.
situationally aware of where you are, what people you are dealing with. And I talk a lot. I have a branding packet that I give out to local title holders and state title holders. And in it, it talks about being aware of your situation and appearances. Like if you're going to go work at a soup kitchen, you should not be wearing a tight dress and 5-inch stiletto heels in your crown and your sash. Like if you want
Yeah.
to take a photo in your sash, that's awesome. That's not a crown activity. And you also
Mm,
need to dress as the part of your working in the soup kitchen.
yeah.
So you can wear a shirt that has your branded logo on it and some jeans, and you are perfectly fine because you are serving. You're not going
Mm,
to be in an interview type outfit. And so it's just being aware of those little things, because a lot of times when people are getting into pageantry and they're new, they don't notice that. They don't know really, what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And so that's kind of why I created my branding packets in the first place, to not only help them brand themselves for social media, brand themselves for the job of a title holder, but also like how
yeah.
to brand themselves personally, how to create your own brand and your voice, but also be aware of different things. And I've made a lot of mistakes. I've been in this business for over 10 years, I think almost 12 now, which is so crazy to say as I'm 21 years old now and I started when I was 9. But I've learned so much, and it's about sharing that knowledge because I don't want people to make the same mistakes I did when I first started and I
Yeah.
wore my crown and my sash to a soup kitchen, so
Yeah, but I think it comes back to another thing you said, which is about social media and the need to be able to build relationships with people face to
yeah.
face. Because I think there's a lot of I don't know if narcissism is the right word, but it's kind of like the look at me, not just a generation, but the look at me age. I mean, I was just on my
Mhm.
morning walk and a woman almost walked into me. She would have been 30 years old because she was on her phone looking at something and smiling at it. I'm like, I'm walking off the road to accommodate you. You don't even notice that I exist. So I think part of the issue here, and you tell me your thoughts on this. I think part of the issue is we are very focused on ourselves. That's what social media does,
Yeah,
is like, look at me, look at me, look at me. How many likes did I get? If I didn't get enough likes, let's delete that. But when you go into like a service area, and I'm hyper aware of it because of all the work that I've done with people, you have to sort of play to the environment. And if it's a soup kitchen, no one wants you in 5-inch stilettos. And, if you're
no.
wearing something tight, you can't bend over, you can't bend down. What good are you going to be? And it's not about you.
Yeah.
Talk to the people as people, and you're there to serve. But I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it all comes down to intentionality of it, and
Mm,
being intentional with what you're doing and how you're serving. I do agree. I think we're in a show me age where everything we have to do, we have to post because if it's not posting, it didn't happen. And we're constantly comparing ourselves, as a title holder. And I think as a woman in general, and every person
mm,
battles with comparison, you're always going to look at someone and either let that motivation push you to be better or let that motivation slowly eat at you until you wither away. And
yeah.
so there is a right and there's a wrong side of comparisons, in my opinion. But back to social media, it can be such a hassle. It can be such a pain, but it can also bring so many good things. I know I'm working right now on a huge campaign with St.
Mm,
Jude and the Salvation Army. And so being able to promote, like I just did a promotion for our virtual walk run event for St. Jude, where a lot of money was raised and it was a huge national walk. And so doing promotion for that has been great. And that's something where social media is needed, but that's not
yeah.
necessarily needed as a, hey, I'm doing a takeover in a soup kitchen. Um,
Yeah.
and there's lots of other instances like that, but it's also being aware because whenever you go and speak in elementary schools, you also have to be aware of who you can and who you can't post on social media. And so
Yeah.
I see title holders all the time post these young kids, and it's like you don't know if they have their
Yeah.
parents' permission. So it's all
Yeah.
these legal things that also go into it too, which I'm very logically
Mm,
minded, and so that always plays a huge factor in what I'm posting and how I'm posting. And honestly, it'd just be so much easier if I didn't post, but that's not the job description. That's not something I signed up for.
yeah.
And so one day when I get to that point where I don't have to do that, I'm going to be majorly celebrating.
I think it's a case of use social media rather than have social media use you. I think that
Use
would
you. Yes.
probably be the easiest way of summing it up. Just before we go to the close, because I'm mindful of your time, you mentioned that you've been in this for 12 years, and that you're 21. You seem to have a revelation that, wow, I'm getting old for this industry. I don't know. I just looked at this look in your face and like, that's an interesting look. But the 9-year-old, if I take you back to 9-year-old Haleigh, and she was to look at the woman you've become, how would the 9-year-old feel?
Oh my gosh, I could get emotional talking about this question. Mainly because I never would have thought that I would end up where I am today. I never would have thought that I would have the success that I've had, but also the community that surrounds me. I'm a firm believer that iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. And so just being able to spend 12 years in this industry, being continuously sharpened by other people, and my coaches have
Mm,
always poured into me, and those around me have always supported me. It's something that I never thought I would have at 9 years old. I also
mm,
never thought at 9 years old I would be speaking clearly and seeking a triple major and going to law school and having these major aspirations because, at 13, I almost thought that my life was over because I had a speech impediment. And
mm,
so looking back and like seeing the huge change in my confidence, my self esteem, um, and that's a huge reason I think why I'm still competing and why I haven't fully entered that retirement era yet was
yeah.
because, at 9 years old, like I never would have thought I'd be here. And now that I'm here, I don't want to not be where I'm at. And I've been so fortunate to have these relationships with littles and mentor them. And that's something that I love to do now as I'm kind of stepping behind and doing more of a coaching role as well,
Mhm,
but empowering younger girls to find what they're passionate about and helping them learn how to communicate better and learning skills that will help them not only in pageantry and life, because I know how much this has helped me and how much this has set me up for success. And so I think for me, like looking back at 9-year-old Haleigh is the reason why I'm still here and why I'm still competing because I want no one to ever feel like middle school Haleigh and she was severely bullied. I want no one to feel like Haleigh when she was told she was never enough. That is never going to happen when people are around me. I always want to work on building people up, and so I think that's why I'm still here. I'm still competing. I'm still going strong. 12 years later. 12
We
years
should
later.
just we should just set up our next interview now. I mean, I think no matter whether you step back from pageantry or not, I don't think you're ever going to completely disappear from the scene. And I think
No,
the
I hope
pageant
not.
world
I
would be
love
a
it.
well. I mean, there's so many different ways you can contribute, whether it's coaching, whether it's directing, and I think you'd be very, very welcome in any of those or all of those roles. Just before we move to the final 10, anyone you want to give a shout out to? I mean, parents, obviously, we've talked about them and we still need to do the parenting
Obviously.
course, but shout outs.
Yes. Shout out to my parents. A huge thank you to my amazing Miss Virginia volunteer directors, the Runk family. So, Caitlin and Chris and Vicky have all done an amazing job in just shaping me the past 2 months I've been with them. I think tomorrow is my official 2 month anniversary with this amazing title. So, that's really exciting. And just huge shout out to my mentor, Lisa Dean, who has pushed me to be the young woman I am today. And yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's go through these 10 final questions, same as last time. I don't remember what you said last time, but we'll find out. So,
I don't remember
number
either.
one, what is your favorite word?
Ooh. Balloon.
No explanation required. We'll just leave it at that. Number two, what is your least favorite word?
Oh, wow. Um, any R word because I hate using my R's.
So that round the rugged rock, the ragged rascal ran. That's not something that.
Don't ask me to say that.
Okay, I won't. Number three, in life, what gets you excited? What turns you on?
I think it's just being around other people who are excited to live life and excited to have another day, another new opportunity, and are just genuinely positive people.
What turns you off?
Negativity and social media.
That's kind of synonymous, isn't it? Negativity and social media. Anyway, moving on. What sound do you love?
I love the sound of popping popcorn because popcorn's one of my favorite foods, first off. And secondly, it's just so soothing to pop popcorn and then you like throw it in a bowl and mix it with like different toppings.
Hot take. I've never understood popcorn. It's like 50, 60% air, and then the rest is salt and butter. But
Yes,
that's
it's
just
so
me.
delicious.
What about what sound do you hate?
Clicking sounds, like constant clicking sounds. So clicking pins, clicking computers, clicking electronics, clicking anything. It drives me insane. I can't focus.
You would have a hard time in an office then, wouldn't you? If everyone's typing on their keyboard, so you can just tune that out.
I put my AirPods in and I'm listening to
Ah,
some type of podcast usually or some coffee shop music.
cool. All right. If you could have any one superpower, what would you pick and why?
Transportation. So just transporting one place to another. Never have to worry about driving. Never have to worry about being on time.
I mean, you said you weren't great at driving. I mean, when you say you're not great at driving, what does that mean exactly? Just out of curiosity.
You don't want to know. I've had a
Okay.
couple
All right.
accidents, a couple speeding tickets. My parents are
Okay.
watching, so
Why have our insurance premiums gone up? I have no idea.
I have no
You know,
idea.
bat the eyelids sort of thing. All right. What job would you most like to attempt?
I mean, besides being a lawyer, that's my dream job. I would never mind being president of the United States. That's a far off dream.
When that happens, let me know. And I mean, I can't vote for you. I'm not an American citizen, but I'll campaign for you. That
Thank you. I
campaign.
appreciate that.
So maybe in 10 years' time, given the pace that you live your life at, we'll see. What job would you definitely not like to attempt?
Anything that has to do with medical, blood, gore, anything surgical. I don't do
Okay.
blood or needles.
Final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Welcome home.
Nice. Enough said. Well, Haleigh, that's it for round two. We will schedule round three for when you have unretired from your retirement yet again. But it's a pleasure as always, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I've always enjoyed being here.
And I'll keep you on the line for just a sec whilst I hang up with the audience. But thanks everyone for watching, and we will speak to you next time. Bye for now.